June 25, 2009. Farrah Fawcett, America's Angel, drew her final breath in silence. And the world barely noticed. In a sterile hospital room in Santa Monica, California, the woman whose golden hair had once been as recognizable as the American flag itself was dying alone, save for a few loved ones holding vigil by her bedside. The angel who had soared higher than almost any star of her era was falling to earth, her wings broken by cancer, her light dimming to nothing. But just miles away in Los Angeles, news crews were racing toward another story entirely. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, had collapsed at his home, and within hours his death would dominate every headline, every news broadcast, every conversation around the globe. The woman who had once commanded the attention of an entire nation would die in the shadow of someone else's spotlight, her passing reduced to a footnote in the endless coverage of Jackson's demise. She was America's angel, and America forgot to look up. How does a goddess become invisible in her final moments? How does a woman whose smile once lit up television screens across the world end up forgotten on the very day she leaves it? The story of Farrah Fawcett is the story of fame's cruelest irony. How the brightest lights can cast the darkest shadows. How the highest flights can end in the most devastating falls. But to understand how America's angel lost her wings, we must travel back to a time when television was creating new kinds of stars, when one smile could change everything, and when Farrah Fawcett was about to become the most famous face in the world. Born Farrah Lenny Fawcett on February 2, 1947 in Corpus Christi, Texas, she entered a world that still believed in clear distinctions between right and wrong, good and evil, angels and sinners. Her father, James Fawcett, was an oil field contractor who had built a modest fortune through hard work and determination. Her mother, Pauline, was a homemaker who instilled in her daughter the conservative values of mid-century America. Texas in the 1940s and 50s was a place where beauty queens and football heroes were the closest things to royalty, where a girl's looks could open doors that talent alone might keep closed. Farrah grew up understanding this equation, but she also possessed something that went beyond mere physical beauty, a warmth and authenticity that made people want to be around her. From her earliest years, Farrah stood out. She was the youngest of 3 children, but she was the one who drew stares when the family went to church on Sundays. Her blonde hair caught the light like spun gold, and her smile seemed to illuminate whatever room she entered. But it wasn't just her appearance that made her special. It was the way she made other people feel when they were around her. Her childhood was marked by the kind of stability that was becoming increasingly rare in America. The Fawcett family attended church regularly, ate dinner together every night, and believed in the values of hard work, honesty, and community service. Farrah was raised to be polite, modest, and respectful, qualities that would serve her well when she eventually entered the cutthroat world of Hollywood entertainment. But even as a child, Farrah showed signs of the ambition that would later drive her to stardom. She was involved in every school play, every talent show, every opportunity to perform. Her teachers noted that she had a natural ability to command attention without seeming to try, a quality that would later prove invaluable in her television career. The University of Texas at Austin in the mid-1960s was a hotbed of cultural change, a place where traditional values were colliding with new ideas about freedom, sexuality, and women's roles in society. Farrah arrived on campus in 1965 as an art major, planning to become a teacher, but her stunning looks quickly made her one of the most recognizable students on campus. She was voted most beautiful in her freshman, sophomore, and junior years, an unprecedented achievement that brought her to the attention of talent scouts and modeling agencies. But Farrah was more than just a pretty face. She was intelligent, driven, and determined to make something of herself beyond her appearance. During her college years, Farrah began modeling for local photographers and appearing in small advertising campaigns. The work was lucrative and fun, but more importantly, it gave her a taste of what life might be like in front of the camera. She discovered that she had a natural ability to connect with the lens, to project warmth and personality even in still photographs. It was also during this period that Farrah first encountered the darker side of the entertainment industry. Photographers and agents who promised her stardom in exchange for compromises she wasn't willing to make. Producers who saw her as nothing more than a beautiful object to be used and discarded. These early experiences taught her to be cautious, to trust her instincts, and to never compromise her values for the sake of success. The decision to leave Texas and pursue a career in Hollywood wasn't made lightly. Farrah was close to her family, deeply rooted in Texas culture, and genuinely uncertain about whether she could succeed in an industry known for chewing up and spitting out young women. But something inside her knew that she had to try, that she would always wonder what if she didn't take the chance. In 1969, Farrah packed her belongings into a small car and drove west toward Los Angeles, leaving behind the security of home for the uncertainty of Hollywood dreams. She was 22 years old, beautiful, and completely unprepared for what awaited her in the entertainment capital of the world. Los Angeles in the early 1970s was a city in transition. The old studio system was crumbling. Television was becoming more important than movies, and a new generation of performers was challenging traditional ideas about stardom. Farrah arrived at the perfect moment to take advantage of these changes, but she also had to navigate an industry that was still largely controlled by men who saw women primarily as sexual objects. Her early years in Hollywood were marked by the typical struggles of any aspiring actress. Auditions that led nowhere, small roles that paid almost nothing, and the constant pressure to compromise her values for the sake of advancement. But Farrah possessed a quality that set her apart from the thousands of other beautiful women trying to make it in Hollywood, an essential sweetness and authenticity that cameras loved. Her breakthrough came not in movies or television, but in commercials. Farrah's wholesome beauty and genuine smile made her perfect for advertising campaigns aimed at Middle America. She appeared in commercials for everything from shampoo to soft drinks, each appearance adding to her growing reputation as one of the most photogenic faces in Hollywood. The commercial work was lucrative and helped establish her as a recognizable face, but Farrah wanted more. She studied acting, took voice lessons, and worked tirelessly to improve her craft. She understood that beauty alone wouldn't sustain a long-term career. She needed to develop real skills as a performer. Her first significant television role came in 1970 when she was cast in a recurring role on the detective series Harry O. The part was small, but it gave her valuable experience working with professional actors and directors. More importantly, it introduced her to the television industry at a time when the medium was beginning to experiment with stronger female characters. It was during this period that Farrah met Lee Majors, the handsome star of The Big Valley, and later the $6 Million Man. Their courtship was a fairy tale romance that captured the attention of the entertainment press. Here were two beautiful, successful people who seemed to embody the American dream of fame, fortune, and happiness. They married in 1973 in a ceremony that was covered extensively by the entertainment media. For a brief moment, they seemed to have it all: career success, financial security, and a love that appeared to be built on mutual respect and shared values. But the pressures of two demanding careers in the entertainment industry would soon begin to take their toll on their marriage. Farrah continued to work steadily throughout the early 1970s, appearing in guest roles on popular television series and made-for-TV movies. She was building a solid reputation as a reliable professional who brought warmth and intelligence to every role. But she was still far from the household name she would soon become. Everything changed in 1976 when television producer Aaron Spelling was developing a new series called Charlie's Angels. The show's concept was simple but revolutionary for its time. Three beautiful, intelligent women working as private detectives, using both their brains and their looks to solve crimes. Spelling needed actresses who could handle action sequences while maintaining the glamour and sex appeal that would attract viewers. When Farrah auditioned for the role of Jill Monroe, she wasn't considered the front-runner. She was competing against dozens of other beautiful actresses, many of whom had more extensive television experience. But something about Farrah's combination of beauty, athleticism, and genuine likability made her perfect for the role. The casting of Charlie's Angels was crucial to the show's success. Alongside Farrah were Kate Jackson, a seasoned actress who brought intelligence and gravitas to her role, and Jaclyn Smith, whose classic beauty provided the perfect contrast to Farrah's more athletic, all-American appeal. Together, the three women created a dynamic that would captivate audiences around the world. But it was Farrah who became the breakout star. Her flowing blonde hair, radiant smile, and athletic grace made her the most memorable of the three angels. More importantly, she brought a quality to the role that transcended mere sex appeal. She made Jill Monroe seem like someone you might actually know, a real woman rather than a fantasy figure. The show premiered on September 22, 1976, and was an immediate sensation. Charlie's Angels captured something in the American zeitgeist that no one had anticipated. Here were three women who were beautiful but also strong, sexy but also smart, glamorous but also capable of taking care of themselves. They represented a new kind of female character on television, one that reflected the changing roles of women in American society. Farrah's impact was immediate and overwhelming. Within weeks of the show's premiere, she had become the most recognizable face on television. Her hairstyle, layered, feathered, and bouncing with every movement, became the most copied look of the decade. Hair salons across America were flooded with women asking for the Farrah, but it was a poster that truly cemented her status as a cultural icon. The red bathing suit poster, showing Farrah in a one-piece swimsuit with her hair perfectly feathered and her smile radiant, became one of the best-selling posters in history. Over 12 million copies were sold, and the image became as much a part of 1970s culture as disco music and platform shoes. The poster represented something more than just sex appeal. It captured a moment when American culture was becoming more comfortable with female sexuality and independence. Farrah looked confident, healthy, and happy in the image, not like a victim or an object, but like a woman in control of her own destiny. The success of Charlie's Angels and the poster transformed Farrah from a working actress into a global superstar practically overnight. She appeared on magazine covers around the world, was interviewed by every major media outlet, and found herself at the center of a cultural phenomenon that she hadn't anticipated and wasn't entirely prepared for. But fame at this level came with a price. Farrah found herself constantly followed by photographers, her every move scrutinized by the media, her personal life dissected by gossip columnists. The woman who had once enjoyed simple pleasures like shopping or going to restaurants now found these activities virtually impossible without being mobbed by fans or paparazzi. More troubling was the way her sudden fame affected her marriage to Lee Majors. Both were successful actors, but Farrah's meteoric rise to superstardom created an imbalance in their relationship that neither had anticipated. Lee, who had been the more established star when they married, now found himself constantly referred to as Farrah Fawcett's husband, rather than as an actor in his own right. The pressures of fame also revealed fundamental differences in how the couple approached their careers and their relationship. Lee was content with his success on The $6 Million Man, and valued the security and routine of a long-running series. Farrah, energized by her sudden success, wanted to explore new opportunities and challenge herself as an actress. The tension came to a head when Farrah made the shocking decision to leave Charlie's Angels after just one season. Despite the show's massive success and the financial security it provided, she felt trapped by the role in the show's formulaic scripts. She wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, not just admired as a beautiful woman in an action series. The decision to leave Charlie's Angels was one of the most controversial moves in television history. Fans were outraged, producers were furious, and critics predicted that her career would never recover. How could she walk away from the role that had made her famous from a show that was still riding high in the ratings? But Farrah was determined to prove that she was more than just a pretty face in a popular television series. She wanted to take on challenging, dramatic roles, to work with respected directors, to build a career that would be remembered for more than just a hairstyle and a poster. Her first post-Angels project was the 1978 film Somebody Killed Her Husband, a comedy thriller that was intended to establish her as a movie star. The film was a critical and commercial failure, and many saw it as proof that Farrah had made a terrible mistake in leaving television. But she persevered, continuing to seek out roles that would challenge her and help her grow as an actress. The real vindication came in 1984 with The Burning Bed, a made-for-television movie about an abused wife who kills her husband in self-defense. The role was a dramatic departure from anything Farrah had done before, requiring her to portray a woman who suffers years of physical and emotional abuse before finally fighting back. Farrah's performance in The Burning Bed was a revelation. She brought depth, nuance, and raw emotion to the role, creating a character who was both vulnerable and strong, both victim and survivor. The film was a ratings success and earned Farrah an Emmy nomination, finally proving that she was capable of serious, dramatic work. But even as her professional life was reaching new heights, her personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. Her marriage to Lee Majors had ended in divorce in 1982, after years of growing apart and struggling with the pressures of their respective careers. The divorce was amicable, but it marked the end of what had once seemed like a perfect Hollywood romance. It was around this time that Farrah began her relationship with Ryan O'Neal, the handsome actor best known for his roles in Love Story and Paper Moon. Their relationship would prove to be one of the most passionate and tumultuous romances in Hollywood history. A love affair that would span decades and produce both great joy and profound heartbreak. Ryan was everything that Lee Majors wasn't: mercurial, unpredictable, and completely absorbed by the drama of Hollywood life. Where Lee had been steady and reliable, Ryan was exciting and dangerous. Where Lee had valued privacy and discretion, Ryan seemed to thrive on attention and controversy. Their relationship was intense from the beginning, marked by passionate reunions and equally dramatic breakups. They would be together for months or years at a time, then separate over some crisis or disagreement, only to find their way back to each other when the hurt had faded enough to allow forgiveness. In 1985, Farrah gave birth to their son, Redmond O'Neal. The pregnancy and birth were supposed to bring stability to their turbulent relationship, and for a while it seemed to work. Farrah threw herself into motherhood with the same intensity she brought to her acting career, determined to give Redmond the stable, loving childhood that she had enjoyed in Texas. But parenthood also revealed new sources of conflict between Farrah and Ryan. They disagreed about everything from discipline to education, to the role that Ryan's older children from previous relationships should play in Redmond's life. What should have been a unifying experience instead became another source of tension in their already complicated relationship. As Redmond grew older, it became clear that he was struggling with the unique pressures of being the child of two famous parents. The constant media attention, the instability of his parents' relationship, and the permissive atmosphere of Hollywood all contributed to problems that would plague him throughout his life. By his teenage years, Redmond was experimenting with drugs and alcohol, displaying the kind of destructive behavior that had become all too common among the children of celebrities. Farrah, who had grown up in a stable, traditional family, was ill-equipped to deal with these problems and often found herself caught between her desire to help her son and her inability to control his choices. The situation was made worse by Ryan's own struggles with addiction and legal problems. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Ryan was arrested multiple times on drug-related charges, and his erratic behavior often made him more of a problem than a solution in Redmond's life. Farrah found herself in the impossible position of trying to save both the man she loved and the son they had created together. She staged interventions, arranged for treatment, and spent enormous amounts of money on rehabilitation programs, but nothing seemed to work. Both Ryan and Redmond would get clean for a while, only to relapse and return to their destructive patterns. The stress of dealing with these personal crises began to take its toll on Farrah's professional life and her public image. She appeared increasingly fragile and erratic in public appearances, leading to speculation about her own mental health and stability. The low point came in 1997 when Farrah appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman in what became one of the most infamous television interviews of all time. She seemed disoriented and confused, giving rambling, incoherent answers to Letterman's questions and displaying behavior that many viewers interpreted as evidence of drug use or mental illness. The interview was a disaster that overshadowed years of professional accomplishments and transformed Farrah from a beloved icon into an object of ridicule and concern. Late-night comedians mocked her performance, gossip magazines speculated about her mental state, and fans who had once adored her now viewed her with pity and embarrassment. Farrah later claimed that her strange behavior was the result of prescription medication and stress, not illegal drugs or mental illness. But the damage to her reputation was severe and lasting. The woman who had once been America's sweetheart was now seen as another casualty of Hollywood excess and celebrity culture. The 2000s brought new challenges as Farrah tried to rebuild her career and her personal life. She continued to work steadily, appearing in independent films and television projects. But she was no longer the A-list star she had once been. The industry had moved on to younger faces, and Farrah found herself relegated to supporting roles in television movies. But she persevered, approaching each project with the same professionalism and dedication that had characterized her entire career. She was determined to prove that she was more than just a 1970s relic, that she still had something valuable to contribute as an actress and as a person. Her relationship with Ryan remained complicated and painful. They would break up and reconcile repeatedly, unable to live together but unwilling to let each other go completely. Their love was real and deep, but it was also toxic and destructive, bringing out the worst in both of them while somehow remaining the most important relationship in either of their lives. Redmond's problems continued to escalate throughout this period. He was arrested multiple times on drug-related charges, spent time in jail and rehabilitation facilities, and seemed unable to escape the cycle of addiction that had claimed so many children of celebrities. Each arrest, each relapse, each failure was another blow to Farrah's heart and another source of stress in her already complicated life. In 2006, Farrah's world changed forever when she was diagnosed with anal cancer, a rare and often stigmatized form of the disease. The diagnosis was devastating not just because of the serious nature of the illness, but because of the shame and embarrassment that often accompany this particular type of cancer. Farrah's response to her diagnosis was characteristic of her entire approach to life. She decided to fight with everything she had, to explore every possible treatment option, and to document her journey in the hope that it might help other people facing similar battles. She underwent conventional treatments in the United States, including surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy. When these treatments proved insufficient, she traveled to Germany to explore experimental procedures that weren't available in America. Throughout it all, she maintained her determination to beat the disease and return to the life she had built. But Farrah also made a decision that surprised many people who knew her. She decided to document her cancer battle on camera, creating a raw, unflinching portrait of what it's really like to fight for your life against a deadly disease. The resulting documentary, Farrah's Story, would become one of the most powerful and moving films ever made about cancer. The decision to make her private battle public wasn't easy. Farrah had always been a private person who valued her dignity and preferred to keep her personal struggles out of the public eye. But she felt that sharing her story might help remove some of the stigma associated with anal cancer and encourage other people to seek treatment without shame. The documentary showed Farrah at her most vulnerable, weak from chemotherapy, bald from treatment, often in pain and exhaustion. But it also showed her at her strongest, determined, courageous, and absolutely refusing to give up hope even when the odds seemed impossible. Working on the documentary gave Farrah a sense of purpose during the darkest period of her life. She knew that she was creating something that would outlast her own battle, something that might help other people find the courage to fight their own wars against cancer. The film also documented the support she received from the people who loved her most. Ryan O'Neal, despite their complicated history, was by her side throughout her treatment, finally proving that their love was stronger than their problems. Her close friend Alana Stewart, who produced the documentary, provided emotional support and practical help during Farrah's most difficult moments. But the documentary also revealed the ongoing pain in Farrah's life caused by Redmond's continued struggles with addiction. Even as she fought for her own life, she was worrying about her son, trying to help him get clean, and grieving for the young man he might have been if circumstances had been different. Throughout 2007 and 2008, Farrah continued to fight her cancer with the same determination she had brought to every challenge in her life. She endured painful treatments, maintained hope when doctors became pessimistic, and continued to work on projects that gave her life meaning and purpose. But by early 2009, it was becoming clear that the cancer was winning. The treatments that had initially seemed promising were no longer effective, and Farrah's body was beginning to succumb to the disease that had ravaged it for nearly 3 years. Even in her final months, Farrah maintained the grace and dignity that had characterized her entire public life. She continued to advocate for cancer research, to support other patients fighting similar battles, and to find moments of joy and connection with the people she loved. She also tried to reconcile with Redmond, who was in jail on drug charges during her final illness. Their relationship had been strained by years of his addiction and legal problems, but Farrah never stopped loving her son, or hoping that he would find his way to a better life. On June 25, 2009, surrounded by Ryan O'Neal and other close friends, Farrah Fawcett lost her battle with cancer. She was 62 years old, still beautiful despite the ravages of her illness, still fighting until the very end. Her death should have been front-page news around the world. Here was a woman who had been one of the most famous people on earth, whose image had defined an era, whose courage in facing her final battle had inspired millions of people. But fate had a cruel twist in store. Just hours after Farrah's death, Michael Jackson suffered a cardiac arrest at his home in Los Angeles. Jackson's death immediately dominated every news outlet, every conversation, every tribute. Farrah's passing was mentioned briefly, if at all, in most coverage of that historic day. The woman who had once commanded the attention of an entire nation died in the shadow of someone else's tragedy. But those who truly knew Farrah understood that she would have handled this final indignity with the same grace she had brought to every other challenge in her life. She had never been motivated primarily by fame or attention. She had been driven by a desire to do good work, to help other people, and to live with integrity and authenticity. The real measure of Farrah Fawcett's legacy isn't found in the millions of posters sold or the television ratings generated by Charlie's Angels. It's found in the courage she showed in facing her final battle, in the strength she drew from her relationships with the people she loved, and in the dignity she maintained, even when everything else was being stripped away. Farrah's story aired on NBC just weeks after her death, providing a fitting tribute to a woman who had spent her final years trying to help other people find the courage to face their own battles. The documentary was watched by millions of people and generated significant donations for cancer research, fulfilling Farrah's hope that her suffering might serve some greater purpose. The questions that surround Farrah's life and death reflect larger issues about fame, beauty, and the price of celebrity in American culture. Was she truly the sweet, authentic person that her friends and family describe, or was that image as carefully constructed as any other aspect of her public persona? Did the pressures of fame contribute to the problems that plagued her family, or would Ryan and Redmond have struggled with addiction regardless of their celebrity status? What is clear is that Farrah Fawcett represented something important in American culture, a moment when beauty and strength could coexist, when a woman could be both a sex symbol and a serious actress, when fame could be used as a platform for important social causes rather than just personal enrichment. Her story also serves as a reminder of how quickly fame can turn from blessing to curse, how the same spotlight that lifts someone to stardom can become a harsh interrogation light that exposes every flaw and magnifies every mistake. Farrah learned this lesson repeatedly throughout her career, but she never let it embitter her or turn her away from the values that had guided her since childhood. In our current era of social media and instant celebrity, when fame can be achieved and lost in a matter of days, Farrah's story feels more relevant than ever. How many of today's stars will be remembered for their talent rather than their scandals? How many will use their platform to address serious issues rather than just promote themselves? How many will face their inevitable challenges with the grace and dignity that Farrah showed in her final years? The woman who became famous for her hair and her smile ultimately became immortal for her courage and her humanity. She showed that true beauty comes not from physical perfection, but from the strength to face life's challenges with integrity and hope. She proved that fame at its best can be a tool for helping others rather than just a means of self-aggrandizement. Today, when we think of Farrah Fawcett, we might first remember the red bathing suit poster or the feathered hairstyle that defined a decade. But we should also remember the woman who used her final years to shine a light on a disease that others preferred to ignore, who maintained her dignity even when everything else was being taken away, who loved deeply and completely despite the pain that love sometimes brought. The angel who fell to earth in that Santa Monica hospital room had learned something that many celebrities never discover: that the most important light doesn't come from spotlights or camera flashes, but from the inner strength that allows us to face our darkest moments with courage and grace. In the end, that may be Farrah Fawcett's greatest legacy. Not the beauty that made her famous, but the courage that made her unforgettable.